Hello humans, welcome to the M-Word podcast. Brought to you by Mom, that's me.
And Matt.
That's him. Thank you, Matt. Hello, Matt. Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
As we found out in the first podcast we recorded, I shouldn't call you a physio, but I'll start with the physio. So perhaps for our listeners, provide a bit of background to your journey into the world of physio.
So I'm a sports therapist.
Not physio.
That means I'm trained in musculoskeletal injuries, really. I just got involved in it really because I was interested in sport at school. My sisters were more academic than me at school. And so I just wanted to go on a very different path than them. So I went and did sport and exercise science at uni, which is a great degree, but you're kind of a jack of all trades, master of nothing. So then I found a master's and just sort of fell into sports therapy. It was down in London. I wanted to be in London and I loved it from the day I started it, to be honest.
What brought you back to the island?
I did some training back on the island, and then the girl that I was did some work experience with, she wanted to sell her clinic. So she rang me and said, did I want to take it? And I think I was just young and naive, and I thought, what a great idea.
So how was coming back to the Isle of Man, and I suppose lived in the big city, was that a hard decision to come back?
I mean, I was living a great life, but I wasn't making very much money. So I feel like the decision was made for me because Mum and Dad had heard of this opportunity, and I'm not sure they were willing to fund more fun years in London, where I was working for a nominal payment. I mean, at London Irish, I think it was costing me as much to get there as I was being paid. So
was that just because it was seen as like work experience in that sort of sense, or how come there was such that nominal pay then for what is a big rugby club?
Yeah, and I was low down on the chain, and to be fair, I was living in North London and it was like South suburb London, so it was like a 2-hour commute, so it was an expensive commute. But yeah, I mean, you're not paid much for those roles when you're like low down in the food chain, and as you get further up, then you are paid better money.
And assume at that point then, so right, is that when you weighed up those options, it was rather to see if I can go up through, or I can get me a more potential practice coming to the Isle of Man. Yeah,
and it was nice to come home. I loved London, but it is hard work in London as well. If I'm totally honest, I didn't envision staying for very long. I thought it would be a nice stopgap, and then I'd go off and get a bit of cash and travel the world. And here I am, 14 years later.
We all thought that at some stage. And run your own practice. You mentioned the word naive there. I think if you own your own business, what don't people see about running your own business?
I think they just don't see what you're doing in the background. They see the short snippet of what you do, client facing, but they don't see the worries when you're like too busy, too quiet, someone's off sick, COVID, and all the admin that you're doing behind the scenes. I feel like when you own your own business, you wake up and you think about business, and you think about business just before you go to sleep. I'm lucky, I really enjoy my work. But owning your own business, I think people think it's all plain sailing. Obviously I'm a mum, and like people always go to me, oh, it's easy for you. You can just, if the kids are sick, you can just leave work. And like that could never happen. Like if my kids are sick, my husband has to go and get them. Yeah. I cannot be bothered at work.
So I suppose having your own business, I suppose being the head of that business, you've got two jobs, which is in the business, servicing clients, and then running the business, which is almost an evening job.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you've got obviously a few staff working for you, the challenges of that.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I've got 2 really great staff that work with me, and we try and be quite collaborative. I think in the environment we work in, it's nice when you can like discuss clients and ask questions and have opinions on what you think is working with someone or why you think it might not be working with someone. They're great. I did a lot of training with them when they initially came on board, and it's paid dividends really. We try and be really flexible to try and help like make work for them. But they're really great. They run their own diaries. They manage their own clients really. So they're just quite an asset to the business. So it makes it quite easy. I have had some staff previously and they've been not such an asset. And that becomes much more difficult. I can imagine in bigger organizations, the management of people becomes one of the hardest tasks.
And the collaboration between the three of you, is
Yeah.
it like someone might ring in if they've got a specific issue that might be one of your colleagues might be better at helping with? Does that happen much?
Yeah, absolutely.
We might ring them for advice.
Yeah, all of the above. Becky, she used to be a PT, so like she tends to be more exercise based. Sometimes we would pass people on to her to just like try and get that final push of the exercises over. I tend to do more gait analysis, so if they're having a problem with their clients and they think it's more gait based, they would pass them to me. And then sometimes people are getting a bit stuck on things and they just want extra eyes on it. So one of us might pop into clinic and we'd have a look over and then we could discuss and see what we think.
Yeah.
And as we kind of discussed off air, my lack of physio knowledge, how competitive is that market then? Because where we then get onto you bringing in, training people, do you find that once you've trained up, they go, actually, I can do this, and then create their own practice? Are there a lot of people who do that on the island, or is it quite kind of niche in that there's three of you now? Do you look to expand? Is three the right number, or is there like that organic transition growth in that sense?
At the moment, 3 is a perfect number for us. We've all had a lot of children, and we used to have one more member of staff, but she moved to America. And at the moment, we're really busy at the moment. And it's a nice number to manage, and they're so reliable and they're so easy to manage. I'm not sure. We would probably try and bring in extra elements of the business. At the moment, what we do well, and it's doing well. But I think if we were going to expand, it would probably be to bring in like a different piece of equipment or something like that, where we might bring in someone to train up to help out with that. But probably 3 is the perfect number at the moment.
Let's talk about muscular.
Skeletal.
Thank you. I'm quite fascinated, and we mentioned when we first recorded, was like where to start with that, because that's the framework, I guess. When you, and I mentioned this previously, I imagine you see people walking just down the street, and you're like, I can see you've got a hip problem just by the way they're walking, and you kind of want to go and give them a card and say, you probably don't even realise you're in pain, or you're just so accustomed to that's the way you live. So I suppose, is that the first thing when you often see patients? It's almost like do a walk, stretch, stand, and you can from there. And it's amazing, really, then just easily deep dive into, I think, the problems here and drill down quite quickly.
Yeah, so in our clinic, we specialise in posture. So we deal with myofascial release. So it is quite easy when you're looking at people, because the body really likes balance. So you're always looking for imbalances, you're looking for torsions, you're looking for twists, you're looking for sitting up straight. The way people sit, they stand, how they go from sitting to standing. So your observations start, they tend to be as you open the door. So you're watching for how they've gone for the door, how they take their coat off, how they sit down to talk to you. Do they want to sit down to talk to you? So often, by the time I'm asking people to walk, I've already done quite a lot of observation on people.
Quite interesting, isn't it?
I say, so what's the what's the reason you specialise in posture then? Like, what is that something you proactively thought, this is what I'm interested in? Is it something you did in your studies, or how did that come about then to be the specialist in that?
Yeah, it's not a well used mode of treatment, I suppose. And so we're one of the few clinics that do it. I really like it. I tend to be quite firm. It's quite a firm treatment. I tend to be quite strong.
What do you mean by that?
Like it's a deep treatment, and it tends to suit me quite well. I'm obviously quite little, but I always like exerted quite a lot of pressure. So
firm in the sense of
pressure, and so that kind of suits my style quite well. But it also works towards everything.
So is that not the center of everything? I appreciate
center of everything, yeah. So like even people that aren't in pain, you can find postural problems with them. But office people, they've got postural problems. Sports people, every sport has got a posture. Like cycling, for instance, you can work on too tight pecs, too tight sternocleidomastoid, or say tennis, where it's a one-sided sport, you'd look at their posture as well. So, and even kids, often they'll grow like one side then the other side. So you're looking from a really early age and then posture, as we all know, in old age, everyone's migrating in. So it works across the span. So it's just such a broad area, I suppose.
When do bodies start shrinking? At what age do they start?
It really does depend, but as you get older, you lose like a lot of your liquid. So the more hydrated you are, the longer that you will keep, and the more you stretch.
Explain to us what you mean by that.
So basically, hydration. Loads of people are dehydrated, but your muscles are constantly trying to, every little thing you do, they get little micro tears in them. So as you go to reach for a door or as you do weights, they micro tear and they naturally want to shorten. So with age, your muscles naturally want to shorten. That's what causes the problem. So if everybody stretched, we'd almost defy age.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then the hydration, how's that interacting with that comment there about the
So in between your spine, you've got discs, and the discs are they need liquid to stay hydrated. So depending on like how nutritioned you are will depend at what point they will start to degrade and degenerate. And that's when people start to shorten.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. And so therefore that shortening age, you're in control of that in regard to hydration.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah. Well, stretching, hydration, exercising, all those sort of things will lead into. That's why you can see some people and you'll be like, oh, they're so old, they're in their 70s. And you'll see other people that are running marathons in their 70s. It's not the age of them, it's the way they've behaved to get to that age.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you educate a generation to... do you think about that? And that's an educational piece in school, I guess?
Massively. I look back to my school years and I just think we didn't stretch enough. We spoke about it earlier, but why do people not adhere to exercise programs or stretching programs? I just think it's not like retained in them. So we all knew we had to play sports. Sports healthy. It makes you fit. It makes you strong. But like we don't do much on stretching, and stretching is so important. Like you can run faster, you'll be stronger if you stretch more,
and you'll be better when you're 70.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe just like a healthy lifestyle, food wise, will arguably have a better outcome when you're 50, 60. Less likely heart disease. This is less likely to be hunched, and therefore I assume a stronger skeleton mass, which therefore provides more activity as you get older. When things are starting to break down, you're just generally stronger.
That's it. And like obviously like acute injuries, they span all the years, but they like I find it really hard when you get a 20
an acute injury,
like so pulling your ACL, anything that's done like straight away, so spraining your ankle. But when you get a big injury like an ACL rupture in a 20-year-old, it's really hard to speak to them and be like, do you know what, this is really beneficial for you because you're going to learn really good lifestyle activities. You're going to have to strengthen. You're going to have to stretch. And you know what, when you're 50, you'll still be playing football if you do this all well now. But it's not a big sell for a 20-year-old.
Yeah. But the question is getting them convinced that that's...
And if you can get them on board, then they are the ones that have the longevity, even though they've had a big injury.
Yeah, okay.
Very rarely I ever hear anyone say, I'm going home tonight to stretch.
Yeah.
It's not that.
It's not cool.
It's not doing the sport, is it? So yeah.
Yeah, there's not maybe sweat at the end of it.
Yeah.
I think about the big sports star and follow the NFL with Tom Brady, and he like strength and condition and hydration was something he constantly talks about, hence playing into his late 40s in a very, very contact-based sport.
Yeah. Like hydration is key, honestly. If people just drank more water, they would be in much...
How does hydration work with muscles then? Does that, I wouldn't say injury prevent, but does that... How do they...
Well, the muscles hold water.
Okay.
So, like, we talk about degradation, and that is a lack of hydration in the discs, the muscles, the joints. Everything is creaky. Everything is less supple. And also, like, my field is obviously myofascial, and myofascial is like a layer that sits over between the skin and the muscle. And if that's not hydrated, it's like a filter system. So it helps hydrate the muscles. So if that's not hydrated, then you can't nutrition the muscles properly.
Okay.
It becomes like glue.
So would then that be the case that even if you're fueling yourself correctly, but because the muscles dehydrated, that you're not on a lost cause, but you're setting yourself back?
Well, your body deals with stress. So you've got all different types of stress: mental stress, vitamin, mineral deficiency stress, physical stress, and all of them will work together. So hydration on its own is not going to be great if you're vitamin and mineral deficient. But say, like, if you're hydrated and your vitamin and mineral, like, they're great, and then you take on a mental stress, you're going to deal with it better because the body reads stress all in the same way. It doesn't matter what stress it's receiving.
Yeah, interesting. And we talk maybe just to get electrolytes in regard to taking hydration, and is that helping the muscles absorb that?
So electrolytes, basically, a lot of your movement of nutrition is done by osmosis. So you want to keep the concentration high on the outside to filter inside. So as you're exercising...
What does that all mean to us layman people? Matt just texted me and asked me to ask.
Do you know what osmosis is?
Okay. I do, but our listeners don't.
Okay, so obviously you've got like a filter system, and then it drives through like the filter system. So
where's this filter system? Sorry.
So you've got your blood supply,
okay,
and then you'll have a layer, and then to get through to the muscle, it has to go through the layer, and that is done by osmosis. So the concentration has to be higher on the outside than going inside. So as you're exercising, you've got chemical reactions going on within the muscle. So that will create a change in concentration within the muscle. So you've got to make sure that the drive on the outside is higher to drive the nutrition into the muscle rather than pulling it out.
And how does the electrolyte interact or improve that process?
So the electrolytes are like the concentration.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. And the pushing it through, that's the porous.
Yeah. So it's porous. Yeah. I'm not sure that was a good explanation.
No. So we talked there, I guess, about almost the lifestyle choices we're talking there, really, rather than sports related. So then if we just talk a bit about the skeleton in regard to sport, it's quite interesting you mentioned about tennis, and if we think about that's maybe more one-sided sport. I don't even know if tennis players switch hands. I don't know. But how's the dynamics of that sport as an example where they're obviously very dominant on one side? Is there often a lot of work having to be done on the other side to get that symmetry back?
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to go on with a one-sided sport. And most tennis players are dominant one hand and they don't switch. Some do, but most of them don't. So you would have like a build-up on the right side. And like I said, the body likes symmetry, so you will have to try and build to get it. It doesn't have to be the same because most people are dominant on one side, but as close as you can. So they are sports that need a lot of work.
And would you tend to see injuries that reflect that one-sidedness?
Yeah. So
for example, I don't know, you play right-handed, that you're going to have more problems with your left side because it's weaker.
Yeah. Or your right side because it's more dominant.
Okay.
But yeah, and you tend to see them like all the way through careers. So as kids if they're playing tennis, as they're going through their adolescence and they're starting to grow, that's when you'll see that they'll struggle like with injuries at that point. And potentially not injuries, but twinges, so they'll start to get a little bit sore and a little bit uncomfortable, and then they'll start to change their posture to compensate for that. And that's when you start to get into bigger problems.
Do you tend to see type of sport you deal with a lot, or is it a bit of anything and everything on the arm?
No, we get all different types of sports through. I think that's probably the interesting thing. And all different ages as well.
I was just thinking when we had Ben in, he was talking about that plate he has, doesn't he? And jumping on that plate and seeing the power dynamics, I guess, of the landing. So I guess part of that is, are you left or right side dominant, and trying to get that balance as close. I think he said as well, you're never really going to get it 50-50, but as close as you can get it.
Yeah. And it's like... talking of something like tennis, it's really nice when you have a collaboration with an S&C coach like that, because it's something that you can't really fix in clinic. It needs to be done like outside of clinic, and you find there's a better adherence if they've got like a coach, and you can interact with the coach, and the coach can feed back to you, and you can then pick up what they're saying to you. Because I obviously see it as it presents in clinic, but then it will present in a different way when it's tired, and they can feed that back.
Just talking of sports there, I guess one that you're probably going to be seeing a lot of at the minute is the parish, with that coming up. Busy times with a lot of walkers coming through, or is that going to be a week after you're going to get a lot more phone calls? So
we tend to find parish starts around February. A lot of the walkers that have decided they're just going to do it start going out, and they'll do like quite a big walk and then come in with an injury. And it continues right up until the after parish. And it's an amazing event, I think, for the Isle of Man. And like to say people are just going to Peel and they're walking 32 miles, and it's such a different array of people, and lots of people that aren't involved in sport think they can have a go, and that's great to see. And some really sporty people think they can just do it, and that they can't, or they can, and that's great to see. And it's nice to just see how people get out and support it. And it is good for the clinic. It's a busy time for us.
You ever done it yourself?
No, I've not.
Do you plan to?
Yes, I do. I've got 3 children, and I wasn't willing to risk the lack of sleep up until around this point. My older sister and my dad did it last year to Peel.
Just to Peel, yeah.
just to Peel. So I was gonna jump on that, but they're not doing it again this year, and I'm not quite ready to train to do the whole thing just yet. I've not got that much free time.
I don't know, with people you've seen, whether it might spook you to go. I see people trying to finish it, and the carnage of a lot of people, which is not a bad thing, but just the injuries, the messy feet, the feet, like, why would I want to end up like that?
Yeah. Initially, I was like, it's not worth it. Like the toenails that are going, the hobbling. I feel like people have got more, that we've got more finishers. People are much more competent in their finishing now. We're getting much less of that terrible state that people are finishing in now, as opposed to 14 years ago.
Yeah. So again, we talked pre-diabetic feet.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something we just talk about taping up where we need to. So just talk a bit about what diabetic feet are.
So with the condition diabetes, they have less of a blood flow to the feet. So there's been some really great parish walkers, top 10 parish walkers they were diabetic, but they would have to take extra care of their feet. So then they would get taped. Often the diabetic clinic will do it for them, but there is a special taping that they would do to try and protect their feet. Because if they do get injured, it's much harder for them to heal because the blood flow down there is not so good.
Okay. And they're more likely to get injured because the blood flow is not great, do they?
Yeah.
The diabetics have worse blood flow.
Worse blood flow and not as good a feeling. So they're often unaware that they've hurt themselves.
Oh, interesting.
It tends to be an unmanaged diabetes, but any diabetes.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, for those parish walkers out there, then what's the most common thing you see coming through then? Is it rather than just say sore legs, is there something, is there usually with these walkers a common trait in what you see come through, or again, is that just because everyone's different?
One of the bigger things that come through is hips, because I think no one's used to that excessive like force going through. And then the other one is when the laces are too tight, they get tendonitis on their tibialis anterior, and their feet swell quite considerably. So you get a lot of that through. In fact, most people get that. Even people that haven't suffered too badly with the parish, they'll tend to have a bit of tendonitis there.
Just assume people just, maybe they don't see a physio, just live with it for a while, assuming it's a consequence of what they're doing. It clears out. So just carrying on the sports side, because we're talking about sort of lifestyle choices, we talk about maybe people that come in with major injuries. Kind of interested to know, that must be a challenge in a number of ways, from dealing with the injury, as in you helping them deal with that injury, and then managing our expectations. Most of us that fall into this very broad comment of athletes, it's very broad, but we want to be doing sport yesterday when we've broke our leg the day before. How do you manage expectations around that? How do you deal with that?
So most people are quite switched on, and most people don't come to my clinic without Googling what they've done and what their expectations are. When you talk about athletes, a lot of like athletes are actually, they're quite structured in their training. So they're quite easy to manage, because you'd get them to choose like an A race and you'd make it quite manageable. And then they go, probably the harder ones to manage are the weekend warriors. And they want to be back on the field like 3 days, and they've ruptured an ACL, and that isn't going to happen. But they can't sit still, and they don't want to give up. Often it's their social life, and it's, and that's really hard for them. So
I'm interested now when it's sports. So we've spoke to sports people, and we talk about purpose, and often people in that environment, or any environment, but that the purpose of the sport is them, whether it's because of the social aspect of that or keeping fit. And when that's swept away from them, the purpose is gone of life, for one of a very broad statement. So do you see that aspect of like...
yeah, massively. And you've got to be really careful about how you word what you're saying to people. Some people can take it and you're like, no, you are so out of like the scope of what you think you're getting here. You're about 6 weeks off. And other people, you've got to kind of pussyfoot around them a little bit, because often people use sport as more of a crutch, and it is quite a lot of their being. And without it, they're quite vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose that's it. Yeah. Absolutely. So then you're almost in a coach role there, aren't you?
Yeah, and like when we went to the Island Games, you tend to pick up a lot of that coach role, because you're one-on-one with them. You tend to build quite a rapport with them, quite a good relationship. They tend to be more open with you than they are with some of the other management team. And so that all brings a different dynamic to especially when people are injured. And even like lay people, people that are going into the office, even if their sport just is five-a-side football, it often means a lot to them. And they're a little, they find themselves a little unsure of where they are, and they use you as a bit of a crutch while they get better.
Yeah. The Island Games, you're there as in with what, how?
So I went as management team, and then Matt now does it as part of our clinic.
Okay.
With athletics.
Okay. I know you're involved in Isle of Man sport as well, and we were chatting with Gianni, who's in that space. And I know Ben does some volunteer work in it. So talk about what you do with Isle of Man Sport. So
I sit on the board of Isle of Man Sport, and I'm a director on Sport Aid, which is an independent charity that's... So we sit as directors on that, 3 of us from Isle of Man Sport, 4 of us from Isle of Man Sport, and 3 independent directors.
Okay, and your job there is to do what?
So Isle of Man Sport tries to, we get lottery funding, and we try to encourage participation on the Isle of Man in all different aspects. So Sport Aid is looking more at obviously elite sport, and there's another subcommittee, Sport Liaison, and that tries to help with governance and developing sport at all levels on the Isle of Man.
Which side do you sit on? Sorry?
So I used to sit on Sport Liaison, and now I sit on Sport Aid.
Okay. And so you're obviously seeing the more, let's say, the eliter end of sport. And part of that role is then I guess, helping support the athletes, and in a really polite way, what you're sat on that board member, what are you doing in regard to that? Are you selecting athletes to go on that pathway? What's the...
Well, yeah, it's a real interaction. Obviously, Paul Jones is the performance manager there. At the moment, Sport Aid is going through quite big changes of how they support athletes. It's a really interesting time, I think. And I was just talking to Matt when we were off air about his injury. And one of the things that Sport Aid are doing now is when they give money, it's given, and they try and advise people on how to spend it, as opposed to, we used to give out free services and people would dip in and dip out but not realize how much they cost or what sort of relevance it was to them. So it's more to try and create an athlete that's really independent, so they manage their time, they manage their money really well, and they use us more as sponsors. So they work out how they should interact with a sponsor, and so developing athletes that hopefully will go on and be like professional athletes.
Why? It's volunteer work.
Yeah.
Why'd you do it?
Sport's really important to me, and I've got 3 children, and I'd like sport to be really important and available to them. So I just thought, someone asked me to do it actually, and when I looked at it, the board was quite a lot older than I was, and I thought potentially I could give a different aspect. And with working in professional sport when I was in the UK, I thought I might be able to bring a different perspective.
How long have you been doing that role?
It'll be 2 years in September.
Oh, okay.
So you get appointed for 4 years. And the board has changed since I was on it. Me and Nikki Arthur got elected at the same time, and now she's gone on to get a different role, and we've got a couple of new members on the board now, and it's a different profile, and it's a really interesting time for the board at the moment. And obviously the Isle of Man sport is a lottery funded, it's not taxpayers, so without people on the board, that money just will not be spent, and it's
the
just
grants reduce if you don't spend the funding.
Yeah, and
You've got to spend it, but spend it wisely.
Yes, and it's just for sport, so it's ring fenced for sport. So yeah,
Do you find it rewarding?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It tests me in a different way. Obviously, I'm my own boss, so I'm answerable to a board now. Sometimes you say things, and I'm like, oh, sorry. And it's really good for my personal development. But I find it really interesting. And then you go to things and you think, and you speak to people and they're like, oh, that really helped. You know, that grant you gave us, that really helped. You know, like Callum Crowe, Sport Aid supported him, and like, look how well they did in the TT. It's really fun watching the people that we support and them doing really well.
And you said there it was a 4-year, I don't know, say term.
Yeah.
Can you stay on? Are you using that?
So I would have to apply to be re-elected. And so, yeah, it's really interesting because Isle of Man Sport is like, we're appointed by the minister, but then I sit on Sport Aid, which is an independent charity. So we sit as directors on that. And then that brings a different aspect because we're obviously trying to fundraise and like raise awareness that Sport Aid is not like funded by the government. It's a charity.
Yeah. You mentioned about sort of personal development in that area. If we go back to business and I assume the landscape of the work you do, just new research comes out, new, I guess, ways of doing things come out regularly. So CPD, presumably as a professional body, you've got to do that, let alone your own desire to be better at what you do tomorrow than you are today. So I presume outside of, we'll get on to having a family, but also run the business, running clients, doing Sports Aid, you've then got this personal development of being on top of your game in regard to your business.
Yeah, since COVID, there's a lot of like seminars that you can do online, and it gives you much more variety to go down a rabbit hole of what you enjoy. We used to go to conferences before, or expos where they like led all the training that was on, and you just went to the lectures that were put on. So that's much more interesting for me. I don't know. I like the training. I enjoy my job, and it re-energizes me. You tend to find that you do something in a seminar and then you do it on every patient that comes in.
Just got a question there then. Where we're talking about the training and the improvements, I assume that where we're looking at that, it's more of the technology and the advancements in ways in which you could treat stuff. It's not, you're not finding anything in a human themselves, in that musculoskeletal, that you're like, oh, I've never seen that before, or over time, because, I don't know, talk about sitting on phones or whatever it may be, we developed a bit differently in that sort of sense. I was just interested, is it more on the you learning the techniques or the human side? Yeah,
like obviously, like sport and sports science is such a new field. There are new things that are coming up all the time. New conditions, new ways to treat things. I mean, obviously, when it comes to nerves, there's still a known commodity. Like there's still so much that people don't know. There's actually so much that people don't know about the body. So there's new findings coming out about that. But yeah, you're right. Technology is like the big thing. Now you can test loads of different things, and how they affect our work. And I'm a bit of a technophobe. But they're bringing in really interesting advancements, with different ways to test things and different ways to treat things.
Yeah. Do you think, I remember we chatted to Connor Cummins recently, but, first podcast we did with him a long time ago, a couple of years ago now, talking about his crash and his injury. We were talking about the power of the mind to heal, which I appreciate might sound to some people slightly hippie-ish. But do you believe there's, when we talk about, I guess there's an element of mindset, but that you can not will yourself, but obviously this, in conjunction with all of doing it correctly, it's like the positive mindset, all those things will escalate and speed up that recovery process.
Yeah, massively. And it's one of the things, like, so in a lot of places, you tend to be battered around clients, and we tend to like to keep our clients, and we like to take them through that journey, because I feel like you build up that relationship, and you can tell sometimes they come in a bit low and you have to push them higher, or sometimes they come in a bit high and you're like, oh, you're doing too much, we need to bring you down. And that mindset, like it's the most powerful thing in the body. If they haven't got the right mindset, and like some patients come in and you just think, I'm not getting you better. Like the interaction between us, it's not there. I'm not the person you need to get you through this. Like, so that you do have to create a relationship, and it has to be a positive relationship, or that it's not going to work.
Yeah, psychology side of it. Interesting. So if we look at when you started on this journey, and let's say you got your own clinic 14 years ago now to today, what's changed in the treatment, or is the fundamentals still the same? Understand the posture, injuries the same, or how's it advanced, or is it just through your knowledge and experience?
Yeah, I feel like I've become
perspectives changed.
Yeah, I've become more experienced, I suppose. So when people come in, the way they talk, the way they touch their injury, often that will give me quite a good insight. I actually quite like Google. When people come in and they've said they've got this injury, it gives you an insight as to what they must have Googled in order to get to that diagnosis. And it may or may not be right. And if it's not right, at least you've got quite an insight into what their thinking is going on. The whole physio pathway has changed quite a lot since I trained. So they tend to be much more exercise based now, and tend to be a little bit more hands off, which I suppose has driven our client to be a bit more hands on, and we try and pick up there. And
what do you mean by exercise based? Part of the recovery process, or?
Yeah, so they tend to, with the majority of injuries, they would try and get the patient to get themselves better. So they would assess the injury, find out what the injury is, and then do some hands-on work or prescribe exercises. The people that come and see us, they probably need I suppose it is a bit of a crutch, probably a little bit more hands-on and before we give exercises.
And the split of patients you typically see when we go back to the conversation around, I say, lifestyle performance from just maintenance and being a good place into the sports space. Are you evenly split in there, or what's that split of clients typically look like?
It will depend. Yeah, it does vary throughout the year. Yeah. So as the parish goes on, then you probably get more sporty people coming in. But yeah, very 50-50. Right. And we have like a real age range in the clinic as well. And it makes it really interesting. Everyone's a puzzle and you've kind of got to piece together. And I'm really lucky that we've got the time to like spend with the clients so we can find out what the hobbies are, what they do for a job, because actually all of that feeds into why they're presenting the way they're presenting.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm just really fascinated that when you meet a physio, they're observing everything you do and picking up signals off, like you say, the way they walk in, the way they sit down or don't sit down. That, I don't know, I suppose it's just, you just assume the knee's sore and that's all they're focused on, but they're looking at how you walk and trying to find signs to what that problem might be.
Yeah, and the body is like a really holistic piece of equipment. So everything you do interacts with the next bit. I'm really lucky that I've got the time to like, you can dissect that a little bit. So you can be like, why are you limping? And they'll be like, well, I broke my toe 4 years ago. And you're like, well, that's probably why your hip's sore now. You don't need to limp anymore.
People don't make those connections. I mean, we talk saying I had a heel problem probably for 4 years and not really considered. I just got out of bed, it's sore, kind of walk on it, go normal, and I forget about it. But it transpires. I've got, I never thought of mentioning it.
Yeah.
It's just that. Yeah.
No, and that's where as a practitioner you've got to try and pull that information out of people. So you're constantly trying to like learn more about them so that like you can pick up on things.
Yeah, it's making the connection. The other thing, when we first talked about just generally the body, that like an injury or a pain in your calf might be glute related, and I think that's something through seeing physios for a long time, that because something's sore in one place, the problem's often not in that place, it's somewhere else in the body.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard when you're talking about adherence to exercises, and they're like, but my calf's sore, and you're like, yeah, I know, but you need to do these exercises because your core's so weak, like you're not walking properly. So it's hard. You've got to explain that to people and try and get them on board, and then their adherence is a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Insight. Apologies, we had to do a second recording. The second one was, I think we'll all agree, was way better than the first. The first one was amazing, so this is even better. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you for your time. Hopefully the listeners found it insightful. Thanks for listening, everyone. It's word out from Martin.
And word out from Matt.
Poor flimsy humans. Don't you wish you were flawless like me? A towering inferno of physical perfection?
I hate to pop your blimp-like ego, but you're not perfect.